Thank you to the moderator and all the speakers for joining us in this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have second topic with the big theme, infrastructure and technology. Just one me, how e-KYC supports digital identity's role in financial inclusion. This session will be moderated by the Senior Program Officer, World Bank ID4D, Mr. Jonathan Marskell. Please welcome Mr. Jonathan Marskell.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Jonathan Marskell. I'm a senior digital ID specialist with the World Bank Identification for Development Initiative based in Singapore. First, I want to begin by thanking the organizers, AFTEC, for the very kind invitation to speak and to express appreciation as well for the very distinguished panel that we have with us today, representing the government, the regulators, and also the private sector. Before I introduce the panel that is going to be discussing e-KYC and digital identity and their role in promoting financial inclusion, I just want to share some reflections. I've been working on identity, identification, registration in Indonesia for a number of years. In fact, we have a multi-year partnership with the Indonesian Ministry of Home Affairs, Dukcapil, to support improvements to population data. And what stands out from our perspective is that it's quite remarkable when you think that in Indonesia, a very large, a very diverse, both geographically and demographically, country, that around 90 to 95% of Indonesians have a national ID number, the NIK. Of course, there are some large gaps, for example, in eastern provinces of Indonesia, but this is quite remarkable and is very well placed in the global context. Now, in saying that, whilst you have a very good population data system, this data is actually very underutilized. We'll learn more, I believe, today about some of the challenges that fintech and the private sector have for using the population data and other data sources for KYC in order to onboard customers. And in fact, Indonesia is now the last of the middle income ASEAN countries to launch a digital ID initiative. So the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Brunei, they all have national digital identity initiatives. However, Indonesia does not. And I look forward to hearing more perspectives on what can be done within the context of Indonesia. So I'd like to introduce the panelists. As I mentioned, it's a very distinguished panel. First of all, Dr. Dian Ediana Rae. Bapak is a chairperson of the Indonesian Financial Transaction Reports and Analysis Center, or PPATK. He got this position in May this year. Congratulations, Bapak. And he reports directly to the President of Indonesia. Before this position, he was the deputy chairperson. And before that, he was 30 years with Bank Indonesia. So he is a central banker by profession. Then we have Ibu Dr. Amalia Adininggar Widyasanti, or Winnie for short, I believe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She was recently appointed Deputy Minister for Economic Affairs in the Ministry of National Development Planning, or BAPPENAS for short. Congratulations, Ibu. She was previously a senior advisor on economy and financing to the Minister of BAPPENAS, and she's been with BAPPENAS since 1999. From the private sector, we have Pak Iwan Kurniawan. He's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Modalku. This is a digital lending and credit technology platform for SMEs, MSMEs in Indonesia. In 2018, he was among the Forbes Asia 30 under 30. And prior to joining Modalku or founding Modalku, he was a management consultant. We have Bapak Dhenu Wiarsandi, Group Head of Product at LinkAja, an integrated e-wallet service created through a merger of the e-wallet service of Telkomsel and lenders Bank Mandiri, BRI, and BNI. Then last but not least, we have Bapak Reinhart Hemarnus. He's the Chief Product Officer at BAREKSA, the first and largest online mutual fund marketplace in Indonesia for both retail and institutional investors. So we're going to have 2 rounds of questions with the panelists. For the first round, I'm going to ask each panelist to talk for around 5 minutes each, please. It makes sense to start with Ibu Winnie to give us the perspective from the government side, the broad development imperative around this. So, as I mentioned, digital identity and e-KYC are prerequisites widely recognized for inclusive and resilient digital societies, as well as goals like financial inclusion. And I mentioned the good starting point that Indonesia has. Can I ask you, Ibu Winnie, what are the issues and challenges in Indonesia with regards to e-KYC, and how can we address them, and what are government's plans in this respect? Thank you, Ibu.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the comprehensive introduction. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for the introduction. As your question just now, I would like to give some highlights that actually the e-KYC is very relevant with the COVID-19 pandemic that we are now facing. So for that, I would like to say that even though that some of our banking sectors already implemented e-KYC because it is actually mandated by Bank of Indonesia in the BI regulation number 3, 2001. But the thing is that most of the banking sectors in Indonesia, banking institution in Indonesia, still ask the customer to come to the bank in person for applying or for doing the registration. I think if we can implement the e-KYC fully implemented, and then it can be really speed up the process of registration and open a new account in the banking institution. And then it can help really speed up the process of financial inclusion in Indonesia. So as you know that just now you mentioned, there are some issues and challenges in Indonesia to implement or to fully implement e-KYC. So one of the issue is that, of course, regulation, and then how can we really have punishment or what do you call it? How can we avoid any fraud or any risk in data manipulation or errors when we are implementing the e-KYC? So with that, I think regulation is really needed. And again, the other issue is the readiness and willingness from financial services provider to have a policy reform in their banking systems, and then to really implement the e-KYC system and process. And of course, they need investment to really provide the biometric devices. The third challenge is also the Dukcapil infrastructure, because currently remote biometric verification to third-party KYC has not yet available in the required capacity, because meaning that we still need further investment on this one. Dukcapil has committed to fix this issue, and then we know that some progress has been made, such as pilot project with Bank Mandiri, and really appreciate with this one. And again, that after this pilot project successful, meaning that we have to really implement how that KYC can be implemented in the whole banking institutions. And one more issue probably that we can really highlight here that dependency on third parties and also especially for the system can increase the operational cost of the banking institution. So I think this issue can be solved with the technology. Improvement in technology can make everything cheaper. So the thing is that how can ensure that the implementation of KYC will not be an additional cost to the banking institution. So some focus of improvement should be made for sure, because we believe in BAPPENAS believe, and also most of the government believe, that the implementation of KYC can really increase the financial inclusion in Indonesia, and that will certainly help the economic development in Indonesia. So some of our focus improvement could be improvement in digital infrastructure, especially the infrastructure of KYC system, supportive regulation, and mechanism of cooperation, and how to make safe encrypted data exchange. That will be one of the focus of improvement that we have to make together. And of course, one of the focus improvement that we have to address is the capacity building of the human resources. And if there is an authorized service agency, like an intermediary agency, that meaning that we have to ensure the secure network connectivity and secure services, meaning that this is very critical, because technology sometimes can be manipulated or can be used for the wrong things. That I think security, data security, will be very much important for us. I think that's all from me, Jonathan, for the time being.
Thank you, Ibu Dr. Winnie. You covered a lot of very important ground, and in particular, data security. So thank you for that. I'm going to now go to the private sector perspectives before going to Bapak Dr. Dian. Haryati, so LinkAja, well, first, shall we play the video to introduce Haryati? Or should I ask the question? I'll ask the question. So LinkAja has a diverse and large market for payments, and from general payments to government-to-person payments as well, so beneficiaries of government assistance, to higher income customers. How do you currently carry out your KYC processes, and what pain or friction points do you have, and how do you manage potential identity fraud in your operations? Please, can you speak for 5 minutes on this?
Thanks, Jonathan. Actually, I'm replaced. I can represent Faye because she cannot make it today. So let me speak on behalf of her. So basically,
Sorry, Dhenu, please go ahead.
No worries, no worries. So yes, a couple of questions from you. Yes, actually in the LinkAja as well, we're focusing KYC with the e-KYC, like what Ibu just said. Yes, we work closly with Dukcapil, of course, and we have a couple of initiatives as well, like we enable the e-KYC features on our consumer app, because we focusing on, we are the server-based e-money provider that so we need everything to be done digitally. So that would be our main focus, to enhance and also enable the e-KYC features on our consumer app. But not only that, because we also work closely and together with the TNP2K and also the Himbara as well, and Himbara banks, we support the government to people initiative. So we know that they are the non-smartphone users as well. So we call the beneficiaries. We provide the registered agent with the e-KYC process as well. So instead of doing the manual process, we provide all the agent with the e-KYC process. So that would be speed up the process to do the registrations. And yeah, we always work together with also the central bank and also the government as well to make sure that actually this e-KYC is will securely implemented. Well, regarding the, I think like pain or friction points, we see that as probably as a challenges that because of the limitation that we currently have, right? I mean, let's say like this pandemic, right? And also probably because of the limitations of probably on the policies or probably on the because Indonesia is very wide, right? So that could be one of the challenges as well. And the smartphone users in Indonesia, we still see that not all of the Indonesian user as smartphone users, right? So that could be part of the challenges. But in terms of the e-KYC, I try to break down into two processes that very important. First is the identification process, which is the process of collecting and identifying the richest data submitted. And the other one is actually the verification process, which is once the data is being submitted, then we will validate the data itself by comparing not only with a single source of truth, but also the multi source of truth as well. So during those process, we see a couple of challenges because we know that since it's digitally and we're not seeing in person, right? So that could be lead into the risk of fraud, right? So probably like, or probably it's not risk of fraud, but could be risk of misinformations that could be happen, such as like the e-KTP itself, probably it's broken, right? And the capability of the phones probably also not really that good in terms of camera. So data is being submitted sometimes probably it's not as rigid as they are, right? And not only that, could be like someone, quote unquote, they can find easily probably data from anywhere else, right? Or borrow from their friends, or probably being spoofed, or even put the on top of the e-KTP, probably you put your own photos, right? So you, or probably edit it somewhere else using the image technology or applications it's in place, right? And not only that, like mother's maiden names as well. Sometimes Indonesian names is pretty unique, right? Especially mothers from, let's say, late 50s or late 60s probably, because they have like different spell and also probably the characters and those kind of things, which during the e-KYC registrations is not well input. So that could lead also to misinformations that probably either Dukcapil or any of the provider can have, right? And probably the last will be the validity of the photo itself, or the validity of, because we do the selfie as well. We need to make sure whether that's the right person, or probably that's the match with the photos and also with the e-KTP. So I think that would be my answers, Jonathan.
Thank you, Dhenu. Actually, if I can just ask a quick follow-up, because we have a little bit of time. Do you have a rough idea how much it costs for you to onboard a customer through the app currently?
Okay. Okay. Intriguing questions. So I'm not going to share about the numbers, but in terms of because we build this mostly in-house. Yes, we know that there are also a couple of what do you call, the data validity providers, like I think they're also part of the association as well. But I think because right now the challenges is not about the price, but it's the validity of the data itself, right? I mean, yes, we have Dukcapil, but especially for the payment, it's not always about Dukcapil or the e-KTP itself, right? We need also to have access to data, let's say in the government as well, or probably the blacklist data, and also like the terrorism and those kind of data, and that should be done with it instantly. So that, because again the customer is waiting, right? when a customer is waiting, it's not something that good. So that we need to somehow not also reduce, but also to collaborate to make sure that this data is valid. And next, how we going to reduce probably not only the cost, but also the challenges that we have.
Okay.
So that was my answer.
Thank you so much. So now over to Reinhart. So in contrast to LinkAja, BAREKSA offers a bit of more complex products, such as wealth management and securities products. So can you tell us a bit more about perhaps how your KYC processes may work and how they may differ, but also your pain points? And also what makes your products and services different from other basic financial products? And I guess one last question for you as well is, how can firms linking with what Dhenu just mentioned do data sharing amongst each other for the benefit of Indonesia? So we'll go over to Reinhart now to answer those questions. But first, maybe play the video.
Yeah, I think I should wait for the video first.
There you go, Reinhart, over to you.
Cool, thank you, Jonathan. So let me share a bit of context first about the like the capital market fintech in Indonesia, yeah, the state of it. So the mutual fund marketplace, actually the mutual fund itself is not new in Indonesia, yeah, but prior to 2015, all activities for the mutual fund, from the registration to the transaction, is being done manually. So that's where BAREKSA came in. We started selling online mutual fund into 2015. Yeah. Back then, when you sign up for an investment account, you have to come to the branch office, and you have to fill the paperwork, like attach a copy of your ID, and then do your signature, and then scan, wait for few days, maybe a week, before you can actually start investing. So that's what happened before 2015. And then we started with, okay, make everything online, yeah, make it easy for users to start investing, because we believe that investing should be easy, be cheap as well, and should be something that you can do everywhere. Yeah, you don't have to come to the physical branch. How do we do that? So when we signing up users, we will ask for the data, the KTP data, the photo, and then for now we are asking users to write the signature on our app. Yeah, and then from that signature we will match if the signature the same with the one in the KTP picture. So that's the state of our KYC right now. Everything is full online, but right now what we can validate is, right now we already connected with Dukcapil to validate the data provided regarding the ID, the name, NIK, birthplace, etc. We can right now validate it, and for the validity of the user actually uploading it, we are verifying the signature picture, by eyes right now. So we're checking if the signature match with the KTP. So after that, after we verify, hey, the user is valid, the data is correct, the user is the actual person holding the KTP, then we will submit the data into the Central Securities Depository. In Indonesia, we call it KSEY, because in the investment industry, we have SID, single investor identification. So that's maybe the little bit of difference between our industry with the maybe lending or payment, because in financial market we have the single identification number. So we have to submit the data, and then after that we get the SID of the user. Maybe if the user already have the SID before, then we will get the SID, the existing SID, and if not, then we will have the new one. So I think that's the current process right now. If you want to know like how long the process will take, I think it's about mostly our user will be able to start investing within the same day. So let's say the user like sign up on the morning, they can start investing in the afternoon, something like that. But not instant. Why? Because there is some manual process in our end, and we also have to submit the data into the central depository, yeah, so we can get the SID and then user can start investing. So yeah, I will share a bit of difference on the flow. I think the challenge is a bit similar. Yeah, we can validate the data, but we still have a bit of challenges in validating the authenticity of the user uploading it. Right now, we are looking at the digital the signature picture, but there is creating a bit of hassle for the user itself, right? Because writing your signature is not as easy as it is on your paper, right? You have to write your signature on the app, and we have to make sure that the signature is valid, right? So if user just write randomly, we cannot approve it. So it's not that easy for the users itself, and we are still trying to figure out like the easiest way for the users, but also makes sense for us to validate. Yeah, we have been like talking with OJK as well about this. We are looking for alternatives to verify, like if user want to take selfie, we can do face matching with the selfie and the KTP, but does that really answer the question about the validity of the user? We are still in the talk with OJK as well about that, and also not only about the technicals. Yeah, right now with some of the cases out there, some people are getting more anxious about sharing their data, right? Especially if you ask for like selfies, they are maybe not all, but some people start being afraid of, hey, will this data be safe? Is it okay if I share my selfie with KTP? Some people prefer to just write signature instead of just taking picture of selfie with KTP. So we are dealing with technical challenges and also with the customer's trust as well. So I think that's on our side. If you also want to know about the data sharing, yeah, right now we are sharing data only with the say I mentioned before, yeah, the central depository for the mutual fund. But we are not only selling mutual fund, we are selling like government bonds as well. So we are sharing data with the Ministry of Finance as well. And someday later, we might also sell other financial products. So we will start sharing data with many more parties. But the KYC itself will be done on our end just one time. But after that, we can share data with the relevant parties.
Okay, thank you so much, Reinhart. Ivan, again, Modalku is different. You're not targeting individual consumers, but rather MSMEs. So how do you do your KYC processes, and what are your own pain points? And particularly if there's anything different from what we've heard from Reinhart, Dhenu. Wait for the video to play.
Sounds good. Thanks again, Jonathan, for the introduction. I also serve as the board member of the FinTech Association of Indonesia, so we'll cover some perspective also from the industry in my discussion. A quick introduction of Modalku. It is a FinTech lending platform licensed in 3 countries, Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia, with a primary focus on Indonesia. The financing that we've been providing over the last 5 years has been as much as 18.5 trillion rupiah, or as large as $1.3 billion to MSMEs, right? Like you mentioned earlier. So small, medium enterprises with funds provided by individuals as well as institutional lenders. So the SMEs that we serve include both companies like distributors, suppliers, startups, as well as individual entrepreneurs, sole proprietors who are online sellers, restaurants, small restaurant owners, retail shop owners, service providers, and so forth. On KYC, we actually serve both companies as borrowers, as well as individuals who are either borrowers or lenders, because the borrowers could be online sellers and they're actually individuals as opposed to a company. And the way we do KYC is primarily through online data submission, and then via website or email, and then we use a mix of vendor as well as internal processes, right, to validate KYC data. This could be using vendor solutions to connect the databases, as well as for some of these larger loans or larger companies using phone verifications, even site visit for loans that are larger, for example, in the hundreds of millions of rupiah or even billions of rupiahs. So that's, I would say, that slight difference or even somewhat big difference with some of the consumer fintechs that you have been talking to earlier. And the good news is that I think where we are today is that we can do KYC obviously without meeting the person in person, right? That's good for business. We believe that complying with standards around AML CFT is also good for the business and also for the economy overall. The pain points, however, are still there, and they're complex, and they will take time for the industry to work together to overcome. For example, the first pain points around infrastructure or access to data. For example, on AML CFT, we have to assess politically exposed people, right? So PEP, and having limited access or no access to a comprehensive database to a PEP makes it difficult for us to really understand if someone is a PEP or not. And when you assess companies, it's also quite difficult to assess the ultimate shareholders of the company. So you don't really know kind of the end owner who they are. So that is actually a common problem for us who are, or for players who are serving the SMEs. And vendors of KYC today are still, I would say, not that mature yet. So they're still in developing the database, developing the accuracy of the database and so forth. So they have limitations to assess foreign applicants, as well as many other I would say, pockets of the population, which are more difficult to assess. So beyond infrastructure or access to data, it is a point around accuracy of data, right? So we're talking about even things as simple as equipment, because you need a good camera to take accurate, high quality documents. When you're submitting sensitive information like ID or legal documents, low quality camera functions or low quality equipments make it difficult for us to look at what are they really submitting. And the people issues around not updating the national ID on time, not updating the legal information on time, having, let's say, overdue or outdated legal documents makes it also sometimes difficult for us to assess some of the applicants who are applying for a loan. And then finally, standards, and I'm speaking on behalf now more for the fintech industry or the overall industry beyond just fintech lending, is that there's still very different interpretations of what a good or qualified KYC represents, right? So we have companies who are using selfie photo and KTP photo, but then you also have companies that are using live photo and live video to validate the person's identification. And you also have an example of another institution who are just using an e-reader, and that's sufficient, right? So what really is a good standard of KYC? So, and what are the standards that can help us to minimize fraud as far as possible, right? And we also see that different regulators require different kinds of data being submitted, different fields being input. And hence users of different services will have to resubmit or prepare different information for different kinds of services. That makes adoption of financial services of fintech harder and more difficult. So at the same time, I think there's plenty of good news. I think there's a lot of communication on this topic already, like Ibu Amalia mentioned earlier, a lot of communication, a lot of work being done. So ideally, in the next 1 or 2 years, we see even more updates around standards, around accuracy, and around access to data.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Iwan, and for raising some very important issues. One thing that I've noticed amongst all the three of the private sector speakers is this focus on physical documents. Now, I understand, obviously, there is a lot of people in Indonesia who are not yet digitally connected, but I think there's a lot of things going on around the world in terms of digitizing documents and verifiable credentials that can address some of these pain points. But anyway, I would like to now go to Dr. Dian, and thank you, sir, for your patience. So we've heard about a lot of these, KYC processes? And obviously, from your perspective, KYC at account opening or onboarding is a bedrock for AML CFT efforts, which, as was mentioned by everyone, are very important for the economy of Indonesia. But sometimes these larger, more rigorous requirements may, create costs or burdens that could create barriers for citizens and perhaps may slow down financial inclusion. So how do you think the fintech sector can balance the need to comply with all of these requirements and collect and verify all this data with the goal of universal financial inclusion? And do you think the existing regulatory framework and data infrastructure in Indonesia is sufficient? So we'll play the video and then go to you, Bapak.
Right, thank you very much, Jonathan, and a very good afternoon to you all. I think the topic that we are discussing today is a very important one, even though this is not the only important topic, of course, for the institution like us, the financial intelligence institutions. But from our perspective as the financial intelligence institution, probably let me give you some perspective for everybody why this kind of issue is a very important for us in PPATK or in Indonesian Transaction Report and Analysis Centers. So under the current regimes and under the current global regimes that spearheaded by the Financial Action Task Force, that any technological driven innovations in financial sector as well as also in the economic in general, I think should be accompanied. So I think that the stress should be accompanied by the increased measures to protect the system from being abused by the criminal, terrorist financiers, and other sanction evaders. So this is, I think, this policy is very much in line and with the objective actually of the business community itself, and also in line with the government policy. So one of the things that I think we should consider is that how we can secure the sustainable growth of this digital economy. So one of the most important thing, I think, one of the important thing is how to protect the integrity of this digital economy itself. So financial intelligence and financial investigation techniques actually can be adjusted, I mean, according to the developments of the economy and to the development of the financial system. So under the current system, I think we are still very much rely on paper-based informations. Even the paper-based information, we still have a quite numbers of issues that being still our concern. I mean, like fake identifications and fake ID, etc. So we're still working on it. So I think because if you remember, I think most of you remember, I think we had a programs of e-KTP that's probably back to 7 years ago. Even this program itself has a problem. I mean, relating to the corruption. So it's kind of a difficult issue that when we deal with this KYC issue here in Indonesia, because we are not yet implemented the what's so-called the single ID 100%. So certainly that the government is working toward that. So to secure and effective the anti-money launderings and counter-terrorist financing issue, so we need to actually to ensure the credible and quality source of informations to meet the needs of financial intelligence investigation, so to detect criminal activity affecting criminal activity effectively. So KYC is the pivot of the system. So all business institutions should make sure that the process of identifications, verification, and monitoring of of digital economy are carried out in accordance with international best practices. So under the current international best practices, the identification and verification process are adjusted to meet the dynamics of digital economy. So the KYC process is carried out in a much more efficient way, using the technological innovation of regulatory technology, what we call it as RegTechs, such as digital ID and e-KYC that we are talking about. While monitoring, while in the monitoring sector, often use the regulation technology that such as the EML transaction monitoring, EML detections and information database. For example, database of foreign PAPs. I don't know if you're familiar with this term PAPs. PAPs is the stand for the politically exposed persons. So this is consisting of the information relating to all the government official, from the central government to the regional government, as well as also the law enforcement agency and other officials across the country. So we'll talk about it later on. So the ML detections and information database and actually now heading toward more what you call it, more modern way you make call. Probably we cannot heavily rely on human resources in the implementation of the ML-CFT programs. So this is the implementation of the ML-CFT programs actually require financial services sector to provide the accurate, reliable, and up-to-date data on their customers' profile and their activities. So their customer profile and activities, including the beneficial owners or ultimate owners, and a lot of other financial and also legal engineering that we can discuss about, who can support the financial intelligence process and law enforcement process. So to ensure the effectiveness of these implementations, the supervisory agency have also carried out compliance monitoring, like what the OJK has been doing. So the existing regulatory frameworks and data source related to digital economy can be considered as it, I may say probably it is still in its development stage. So PPATK and related agency currently engaging in many measures to improve the regulatory frameworks, as well as to improve the quality of reporting by different reporters like bank, non-banks, also the other financial institution. Through, among others, the implementation of the new reporting system, what we call it the GoML reporting system. Probably any of you are familiar with that system. So PPATK will implement the new system next year's February, at the second month of 2021. So the system itself can help actually the reporting parties like the banks and other institutions, and also the digital communities to report to the PPATK with quite standard forms, and also we have the interactive system. So improving the availability of sufficient database relating to the ML-CFT also is our main concern. As I mentioned before, I mean, we also now in the process of finalizing a lot of instrument that can help us and can help. I mean, actually, there's not only PPATK but also the reported parties to deal with certain issue like, for example, in the case of terrorist financing. So also we are now in improving the business process of analysis and investigation of the ML-CFT, and also we improve coordination among the related agency, especially with the law enforcement agency, and the process we have to make sure that the regulatory and data source in our digital economy can support our effort to prevent and eradicate crimes related to the ML-CFT. So, because probably this how national policy responses will determine actually the competitiveness of our domestic economy, including our digital economy. So I think that's there are several issues I'd like to inform you that probably to make it a bit clearer, I mean, the way we look at it at the KYC issue, I mean, because to give you a flavor, I mean, we, PPATK, receive about 300 suspicious transaction report every day. So, but, well, to be frank, I mean, the most of the informations that we receive is not really what you call it, the quality report. So still some weaknesses in identifying the person and also the profile of the person, and let alone, I mean, the natures of the transaction itself. So one of the things that we are going to do, as I mentioned, I think we are going to provide the data relating to political exposed person probably also next year's. So we will give an access to all the reporting parties to clarify whether certain individual belong to what so-called PAPs. So the list of the PAPs in our institution now is already reached the number of 1.3 million people. So that including their families and also the affiliate parties. So a huge amount of data actually. So I also work now with the Ministry of Home Affairs, for example, relating to the use of the Dukcapil. This is one of the issues that concern most of the market players, because some of them have to, this is not a free, this is not a free system. And they have also to have to pay fee. I mean, if every time they have an access to the Dukcapil. But we are now in the process of discussing, I mean, with the Minister of Home Affairs about the possibility of providing all the business community with free access to the information like Dukcapil, as well as the information being provided by PPATK for like the PAPS list, for example. So I think we will work to also support certainly. I mean to increase and to probably to encourage the developments of digital economy. So we do believe that our competitiveness, our economic competitiveness in the future is very much also depend on the development of this digital economy. And one last thing probably like to share with you is the way we deal with the regulations and supervision relating to this digital economy, including the current issue relating to the virtual currency, virtual asset, etc., crypto asset, etc. So one of the issues that we now trying to deal with actually the issue of the regulatory and supervisory arbitrage, because the issue of the fintech and especially probably now the virtual asset and virtual currency, etc. The issue is basically very much global, but the response is very much domestic. So we don't want to, I mean, to be in hurry actually to implement a strict regulation relating to the this emerging economy. We just want to make sure that any regulation that we provide, I mean, to this newly developed, I mean, the digital economy, won't discourage the activity. So the very basic idea is how to strike the balance between the need of the business community and also the needs of the government, especially also the needs of the PPATK as the financial intelligence institution, that we are obliged by the acts, I mean by the laws, that we have to really make sure that the financial integrity is taken place along with the development of any economic activities. So we work closely with the central banks, we work closely with the OJK in this case. So hopefully that in the near future, I believe that we can reach our agreements to what would be the most suitable and most productive approach to rules and regulation relating to the digital economy. So that's probably our view from the financial intelligence perspective. So I very welcome, and I would like to entertain probably any question that being raised by the audience. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Pak Dian. Much appreciated. Now, I understand from the organizers that we can extend the session a little bit. It was scheduled to end, I believe, at 3:10, but we'll hopefully, with the indulgence of some of the speakers, hopefully you can stay a few more minutes as we go through the second round and potentially with the audience. So now for the second round of questions, I'd like everyone to keep to 2 minutes. So very sharp responses, please. I'm going to go back to Ibu Winnie. You've heard a lot about some of the existing processes and pain points, but we haven't really talked about what are the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do you think are the impacts in relation to the digital economy and digitalization, in particular of the financial sector? If I can ask you to keep to around 2 minutes, please, that would be great. Thank you, Ibu Winnie.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I think this is a very interesting issues that COVID-19 pandemic has influenced many aspects of our life actually, and one of them is, of course, there are 5 fundamental shifts to consumer behavior as a result of pandemic, and one of them is how that they behavior and their pattern related to the digital economy and digital finance. Of course, according to the survey from McKinsey company, that there are shifts to value and essentials, that up to about like 40%, there are decrease to spend on unnecessary goods, right? So meaning that they will shift their spending to only the very essential items. And again, but most of the consumers as well, they are trying to shift to digital and omni-channel. But some of them now are really like to do economic activities through digital, to online, and we think that these changes of behavior will be structural changes, meaning that it will be quite permanent in the future. And of course, the other one is shock to loyalty, that 92% of Indonesian consumers have tried to a new shopping behavior and then like to try new things. So meaning that loyalty to a certain products will be much less than before. And then meaning that the banking systems and whatever it is, we call it the producers, have to be more innovative than before, because they have to really try to attract consumers to be have better shopping experiences and have a new services, new items to shop, and a new variation of goods. And I think this is one thing that the banking systems and the banking institution also need to have a more innovative products, innovation in attracting the consumers. And one of them, of course, is that KYC will be very much important, because people can engage to the banking system without having to really visit the bank offices physically. And then this is very much relevant, that there will be like a home body economy, because most of the Indonesian consumer will be very much really like to do everything from home, and then because out of home activities will not be really like return to the normal situation before the COVID-19 pandemic. But so people will tend, if as much as possible, people will tend to do the activities from home. And then I think that's all, Jonathan, what I can say. And then one more thing that I would like to really mention, that our neighboring countries, like Malaysia and Singapore, have really implemented the e-KYC system quite thoroughly. And for example, KYC already been really implemented in Malaysia, and the database managed by a national registration department, and that the security question can be solved with that system. Singapore have my info that really been managed by centralized online depository, which is a government agency. So I think what I would like to say is that KYC in the post-COVID-19 pandemic will be very much relevant because of the shifting trend of consumer behavior to really do everything from online. That's all from me, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Winnie. That was absolutely perfect. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go, before I go back to the private sector, I want to go back to Pak Dian, just very briefly again, so for around 2 minutes. So there's going to be a personal data protection law, or at least the plan is that this will be passed through the parliament by the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken. What implications do you expect this will have on all of this tremendous use of data and a lot of the things that you spoke about? If you can speak just very briefly about that, please, sir.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. I think PPATK considers that the regulation regarding the personal data is a necessity. So I think the basic idea of this bill is actually to regulate the collection, use, and disclosures, transmission, and security of personal data. So this is the way of how we can strike the balance actually between the need of protection for protection of individual personal data with the needs of the governments and the business actors to obtain and process the personal data for reasonable and legitimate purposes. So without this protection, I believe people will, ultimately will discourage actually to participate in this digital economy. And the digital economy can easily be manipulated and abused by the criminals, by the terrorist financiers and other sanction evaders. So the personal data protection bills, I believe, will create an efficient and also effective government administration system in providing services to the public. So the personal data protection bill will also establish a governance for protecting people's personal data, and at the same time protecting the basic rights of the citizens. So I mean, the condition that want to be realized through personal data protection arrangement is there are many things actually, including the protection and guarantees of the basic right of the citizens in relation to the privacy of personal data, also increasing legal awareness of the community to respect the privacy right of everyone, ensuring that the community gets services from the governments, business actors, and other social organizations, and also to avoid and the avoidance of the Indonesian actually from all kind of exploitations by other nations of the existence of personal data of Indonesian citizens. So the also at the end of the day, hopefully that this kind of bill will also increase the growth of technology, information, and communication industry healthily. So IML, if you're talking again about the MLCFT laws and regulation of basically it's a kind of it's designed actually to prevent, to disrupt, investigate, and prosecute ML. So individuals have the right to privacy and to protect their personal data. This is a fundamental rights in many jurisdictions. And this right represents an important policy objective in accordance with the fundamental principle of domestic law. So that's probably my response, Jonathan, to your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bapak Dian. So now I'm going to go to Iwan, Reinhart, and Dhenu. So we've heard a lot of great comments just now from Ibu Winnie about how important e-KYC is, particularly because of the present crisis we're in and the importance of the Personal Data Protection Bill and how this will increase trust in the Indonesian digital economy. So now 2020 has been a pretty horrible year. I think we can all agree on that. So for 2021, I want you to tell me what is your wish list for in the realm of e-KYC from your individual, corporate, or association perspectives. You know, what do you want to see happen in terms of using e-KYC and onboarding to accelerate the growth of fintech, fintech lending services? And in particular, I want you to focus on you know, the poorer Indonesians. So how to close some of the inequities and divides in Indonesia. So how can we help bring up the whole of Indonesia through e-KYC? I'm going to start with Reinhart, please. If you can all speak for around 2 minutes. Thank you, Reinhart.
Thanks. Okay, so very briefly, the most important thing for me is actually the KYC need to be very easy for users, yeah. Because the point of fintech is the ease of use for the users and also the access, yeah. So if the KYC adding more hassle to the users, I think it makes no sense of using fintech. So the first one has to be easy. And if you ask me about the wish list for the 2020, yeah, so can be two options, yeah. First one, if we need to validate the validity of the users by the actual government data, then biometric access is a must. We need to be able to verify the selfie uploaded into the government data to check whether the face is matching with the government data. But if we want to do that, there is also one more requirement that the cost for this need to be cheap enough. Why? Because well, yeah, fintech is, we are trying to address the retail segment. Yeah. For example, in BAREKSA, our minimum investment amount is 10,000. If the cost of e-KYC is like not affordable for us, then we cannot afford this segment. Yeah. So that's one, yeah, about biometric. But the second one is, if we as the fintech player can do the KYC by ourselves, without like accessing directly to government database regarding biometrics, then we need the standard way for doing this. Like mentioned before, like some player asking for video, some player asking for a selfie, something like that. Then we need the standard way of doing this. So we need to have the certainty of the way of doing KYC by our own. And maybe if there is a clear regulation regarding this, yeah, regarding the standard way of doing KYC, then it will give us the certainty of doing the right way in terms of KYC. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Reinhart. So I heard biometric verification services and standards for KYC process. Fantastic. So I'm going to go now to Iwan. Do you have anything to add? Or I know you will, so please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on top of what Reinhart shared earlier. And also, first of all, I want to thank Pak Dian as well as Bu Amalia for being very open, sharing with us as well about your work in your institutions. And also overall, we're very thankful in the Association of FinTech that the governments and regulators have been very open and even proactive sometimes to help engage on the topic of e-KYC. The issue is that the SNKI, or the Financial Inclusion Organization, has a very ambitious goal, and that is 90% of the population have to be able to access financial services in the next 3 years from now, right? So the acceleration of the adoption of e-KYC is extremely important, and the role of the industry players like us, therefore, is to provide proactive, open inputs and assistance as well to relevant institutions like Cominfo, OJK, BI, Dukcapil, AML, CFT Center, and so forth, around standards, accuracy, and access. The thing about KYC is that you definitely need it because it's for risk management. But at the same time, it has to be fast yet accurate. So the infrastructure has to be very good, standards have to be very clear, conducive regulations as well, so that we can, comply on the risk management part, but yet still be fast and accurate for the growth perspective, right? For the support perspective, for the financial inclusion. So if you look at the member survey, the wish list from the association is that they would like better clarity on the implementation of e-KYC, what makes a good qualified KYC, what standards should vendors also have to be able to have a qualified KYC, and that is not helped by the different standards of different regulators, right? So what makes a good and clear implementation of e-KYC, right? As well as access to data, so wider access to national ID database for more players. Right now, plenty of the access is through vendors, and there are pros and cons there, right? Around accuracy of data, information, accuracy of updates, and so forth. But in general, the wider the access, the better, right? And also the opportunity for us, the private sector, to work with the government or even the AML, CFT organization to understand how we can do AML, CFT more efficiently, right? We would love to have that conversation. I think we'd love to have a better understanding of how we can assist as well as support, right? And also around regulations, how can we have better harmonization of standards as well as definitions across Cominfo, BE, OJK. I think the different standards right now as to what KYC really means. So having that clarity will help different services or different institutions be able to prepare better, because KYC development, adoption of KYC also e-KYC requires cost and investment, right? So if we have to invest in something and it changes over time, that could also be costly for the industry to be able to scale over time, right? And finally, around accuracy, we know that equipment issues are still there, data quality issues are still there. So education to the population around what data quality, a good document submission means, these are all things that us in the industry can do better on and continue educating the population, right? But also ways to encourage or enforce our population and companies to update the national ID and legal data will also be very, very useful going forward. So I apologize if the list is quite long for the wish list, but I think we're in the right direction in the industry, just that there's some more homework to be done, and hopefully more collaboration between the industry association as well as the government institutions can be fostering this overcoming these challenges even further.
Thank you, Iwan. Dhenu, Pak Dhenu, over to you, very briefly.
Okay, thanks. Probably I just want to add Reinhart and also Iwan as well, because I think the wish is already there. Just quick one, I know that 2021, I mean, so this pandemic will, hopefully we're gonna end soon, but again, this new normal probably will take a while to be adapted, right? And digital is a must we need to go to. So yes, e-KYC is very important. Thank you also, Pak Dian and Ibu as well, because I think the government is listening to us and knows that this is also part of the priority to be implemented anytime soon. And I think the data privacy bill is getting there. So I think that would be something for us as the e-money provider as well. But there are three things I think I need to straight out here actually is first, I mean, not only for consumers, but also for the industry as well. For the e-KYC especially, I have a list that we need to have these three items. First is the trust, right? I mean, not only on the consumer side, but also on the provider side as well. They need to have that trust of this kind of e-KYC process. Means like what Reinhart said, that what kind of the standard of e-KYC that needs to be done. I mean, let's say in the Modalku or probably in BAREKSA, could be also implemented in other fintech players as well. So we don't recreate or reinvent what needs to be done, right? But right now, everyone is trying to, like what Pak Dian said, it's still in developing, but yeah, we try to fine tune what is being suitable to our consumers. And next, trust is not only how we're going to trust the company or trust the consumer or consumer trust us, but also the security itself. So That should be important. And next is the valid. Valid could be updated, and also the accuracy of data. That's what I think Iwan just said, or Reinhart, I'm sorry. We need to have that kind of accuracy, whether that the right information is being submitted, or probably, let's say, like e-KTP, right? I mean, we pre-registered e-KTP probably in the address number 1, but actually we live in address number 2, or we need to update it. But how can we update it in real time as well? So next is really integrated. This is more important one, because not only right now we're focusing on, let's say, Dukcapil, but it should be beyond that, right? What Pak Dian said, like AML, and also blacklist data, and also in terms of the industry as well. Let's say the transaction information. But the most important thing is that to implement this, we really need to pretty cautious of implementing this concept, because again, it's the privacy data that is being there. So I think the main highlight is that we need to implement this wisely by not compromising the validity of the data privacy. So that would be my statement.
Thank you so much, Bapak Dhenu, and everyone for the wonderful inputs. I'm mindful of time, and we did receive some questions in the chat, but I don't think we will be able to cover that. But if I can just take a few moments just to summarize the conversation, and once again, thank all of our distinguished speakers, Pak Dian, Pak Reinhart, Pak Iwan, Pak Dhenu, Ibu Winnie. Thank you so much for your time. And all of the issues that were discussed, I can say from my perspective, having worked on identity and KYC in Indonesia for the past 5 or so years, I think it was mentioned that the direction that Indonesia is going is a good one, and I definitely agree with that. There's been a lot of progress made, and you know, in our collaboration, the World Bank's collaboration with Dukcapil, there's some very exciting developments on the horizon that hopefully will make financial services more accessible for Indonesians across the entire country, but also cheaper for the fintech and more digital to support the very dynamic digital economy that Indonesia has. And I can speak on behalf of the World Bank group that we're very excited and very ready and willing and able to support this progress. And I think Indonesia has potential to be a world leader in this regard because of how dynamic the digital economy is and the sheer amount of growth that's going on. If I can just summarize, perhaps there's 5 key takeaways or 5 wish list items. The first one is accurate data across the board. And so a number of people mentioned the accuracy of data in Dukcapil. So how do you incentivize citizens to keep that data up to date? And we would suggest making it easy to update data. Some countries are allowing citizens to update data online themselves, for example, right? Not to go through a very bureaucratic process. We heard that it's important to have standards and to elaborate on the regulations around KYC so that the financial service providers have assurance about what they need to do in order to comply with the regulations, particularly if they're using alternative approaches to KYC, like sharing data amongst them. We heard biometric verification, so particularly against the Dukcapil system. To me personally, it's quite surprising that the data exists in Dukcapil, but sometimes government agencies or private sector have to pay other agents, other private sector KYC providers to do biometric verification against government data. And so investing in Dukcapil's infrastructure and capabilities, as Ibu Winnie said at the start, that's essential. Fourth is access to the data, and not just Dukcapil data. So it was mentioned, for example, data on politically exposed persons and other sources of KYC data. Obviously for businesses, we heard directors and shareholders, that's essential. Fifth, and perhaps I've left this last, but it's the most important, is trust. So we heard a lot about security, privacy, data protection, everything that needs to happen. The citizens, the private sector and the government need to have confidence. So this includes the right regulatory environment, data security, and accountability and transparency. So with that, those 5 items, I would like to thank everyone once again for the fantastic panel. Thank everyone for connecting wherever you are. And I wish you a very, very good day and rest of the week ahead. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Jonathan. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, moderator, and all speakers for such an insightful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are deeply honored to have all the guests and speakers to share the knowledge of accelerating economic recovery through Indonesia FinTech Summit 2020, Virtual Conference Day 11 to 12 November 2020. To survive and to thrive, accelerating national economic recovery through concerted efforts in the digitization of Indonesia's financial services. We sincerely thank you for the kind support. See you again in the next events. Salam kebajikan. Om Santi 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 Om. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.